Good news, you found a job you're interested in, but how do you know exactly if it is a good job? Let's take a quick dive in and talk about it. Welcome everyone to Outsider Information. I am your host Brandon and your strategic partner here with OIAS. As always, if anything resonates, like, subscribe, engage, hang out for a little bit. There's plenty of stuff, not just here, other areas on social media. You can always check out the website. It's a good time. Drink of the episode is this blue elixir. Now, I don't know if you can see the reflection, but it is blue. Green tea, butterfly pea flower, you get something that's floral, robust, and again, it makes up for last week's travesty because I refuse to settle for mediocrity. That is why you're really here, folks. It's for the tea puns. All right, story time. The experiences that we all have, they serve a dual purpose. Yes, as you gain experience, your skills improve and you're able to do more stuff. But also, it allows you to really have a deeper understanding of the things that you know you don't want. And I could make the argument that that's a whole lot more valuable. And you could use that in any context, work, dating, foods, right? Once you try something and it goes horribly, you have a good idea of what to avoid the next time. For me, and this is before I went fully independent, there were a lot of jobs that were not on my resume that factored in as experience as things that I did, but the bigger lesson there was I don't want to be in this type of an environment. And that's really what this episode is all about. How do you identify what those environments may look like? And it's really hard because you don't have a whole lot of time, right? You don't have a whole lot of time from when you apply, when you get that interview, and ultimately if you were to get the offer, right? While the process can be drawn out, it also doesn't really allow for people to get a whole lot of front-facing time. And in a lot of ways, it's a big risk for both sides because you don't really know that person. So what we are going to try to do is look at how you can identify the good from the bad and do so as best as you can, okay? Treat this like a science experiment, right? Social science, hard science, life science, they all have independent and dependent variables. Independent variables are the people who would be in these organizations, right? The people who are interviewing you, the people who are working. You don't really have a full grasp of that. And those things can change, right? People can leave, people can lie, people can do a whole lot of things that are really outside of your control while you are in the process of looking to gain employment into that particular area. The dependent variables, the things that you can control. The job description, yes. So while you are not making the job description, it is there. There are also legal requirements in some states as to what job descriptions have to say. So that job description is going to give you the initial picture of what that thing should look like, and that is going to be your barometer. That is the most important data point that you are going to have because it is then going to allow you to make every decision beyond that. Additionally, the most important dependent variable is you. You have full control really of this process. Technically, you're the one that starts it. So if you don't submit an application, there's no way they're ever going to know you exist. But as it relates to what else you can control, right, you are controlling really how you want to interact with this process going forward, right? The questions you ask, and ultimately, if you are selected, whether or not you want to put yourself in this environment. And you do have to look at it that way. I have said so many different things about the flaws of the job process. They're all well noted. It's basically speed dating and then proposing. And I use a lot of different metaphors, but this one certainly feels like it. So you really need to know how to protect yourself because you could be entering an arrangement in a very quick way that could not be in your best interest. A bad job can do a whole lot more damage than a good job can elevate you, and that has been proven to be true. Going back to another reference, I reference sports a lot. And when I look at player development, a lot of really good players are ruined by really bad organizations because they don't know how to treat or develop them. And a bad organization could do the same thing for your career, whether it sets you back or turns you off to the point where you want to do something completely different. Either way, it can happen, and that is why if you have the opportunity to get information, very important to do so. And it matters. All right, so what does that look like from start to finish? So we mentioned the job description. Think about the intent behind why you are going to submit that application. And I know it's difficult, right? We see jobs that we are qualified for. We're just submitting, right? Looking for work is difficult. We're all stressed. We want to get the thing done, so we are just applying at will. I have been guilty of that in the past, and I know people are guilty of it now. But when you do have the chance to, look at the job description. I am not saying to do all the background research on the company. That can be time consuming, but the intent matters because what's in the job description matters. Another issue that I pointed out is just with the job descriptions and how they cross over with the actual application. These quick applies, these lack of barriers for entry for applications makes it harder on companies because you're getting flooded with applicants, right? You're getting people who feel like they can do the job and ultimately they are applying for it. That is most job seekers, right? Whether or not their resume lines up to it, different story, but people are not just generally are not applying to roles that they are not qualified for. They are applying to roles that they probably meet some threshold for, and that is a flaw with the process. All right. The job description itself, though, can be problematic for the applicant who is taking this seriously because whether there's too much, there's not enough, there are things that you can look for that can at least raise those initial alarm bells that will allow you to ask further questions should you advance in. Some signs, right? Conflicting duties. Do some of the duties that you're going to be asking potentially have a little bit of a conflict with one another? Are there cross-role duties? We see this with a lot of job descriptions where they're not paying great and they're sliding in extra duties in there that would technically be part of another department. And you can point out at anything really that goes with that. Are there conditional aspects of it? And I'm not talking about a probationary period, and depending on the experience and the role, if you have to meet certain metrics, that is all fine. But if they're putting things in there that might sound conditional, right? Whether it's you earn the right to gain something after hitting this metric, you have to really think about whether or not you want to find yourself in an environment that has strings attached like that. Because if those exist in the job description, there's a real chance that they exist in other aspects that you will find out later. The other one that we see frequently inside of job descriptions and in offer letters is the duties as assigned, or needing to do something at the behest of the department. The red flag behind that is because it's very broad. That could mean that you could be given new job duties in the event of a layoff. That could mean that suddenly they could decide that this is your job now and you have to do it, and because you signed the offer letter, that is now part of it. Whenever I see duties as assigned, I do try to get some clarity on that, because if they can't provide a good answer to that, or they can't provide an exact example of that, that could be concerning for you, because ultimately, once you sign the offer letter, you have agreed to do the work that is presented in front of you, and then you would have to make hard decisions if that work is suddenly changing. All right, more on that in just a second. So read the job description if for anything for sanity, right? Not just alignment. Figure out what the questions are going to be that you are going to have to ask, because it will allow you to ask better questions, which is going to get you the answers that are going to hopefully help you make an informed decision. All right. Getting the interview separate. So assume at this point you've submitted the application, you got invited to do an interview. There's going to be a separate podcast episode on the different tactics of offensive versus defensive interviewing styles. There are different methods of how you can go with both. Everything's got a positive and negative. It just depends on how you want to do and how well you read the room. Regardless, though, you should have the opportunity to ask some questions, and if you do, there's always a way to get the information that you want. But before you do so, split this up into two parts, right? There's really two parts of the interview. The part where they're asking you questions, and then if you have time, typically you will get to ask some as well. Assume that everybody is going to be volunteering information, right? You're going to learn stuff during the interview process, but there are a lot of things that you really will want to pay attention to. Mainly how the interviews look. Are they showing up to the interview professional, right? Are they on time? Is there a rhyme or a reason to how they are conducting themselves? Interviewing is an art, and there are a lot of bad interviewers out there, but they are also the first line of the introduction to the company. If they are not presenting themselves well, that's a little bit of a concern, because if they are being trusted to bring people in and they don't have their stuff together, what might you be walking into, right? So pay attention to everything about that person that you are getting a chance to interview with. Are they telling you about the work, right? So what are they telling you about the job itself? Are they giving you any information? Do they have an understanding of the job that they are recruiting for? If they don't, you might not be getting the best information. And if you have to make a decision based off of the information you're getting, you might not have enough. So see what they are able to say and answer about that. Are they withholding anything, right? Is there stuff that maybe were really important on the job description, emphasized as real necessary qualifications that they seem to be avoiding, right? They're not really bringing up certain aspects of the work that you would be doing. Also a concern, right? Again, you are entering an agreement eventually with this company, right? You want to know what you are getting into. If they're withholding information and they're not giving you a full picture of it, what do they have to hide? That is concerning. And again, this is before you get a chance to ask a ton of questions. But if they're not giving you a full picture, they're being vague with the information, a little bit of a concern. Again, you want to be able to make a really informed decision. Are they giving you new information? Again, this can be good, this can be bad. Is it something that goes a little bit off of the job description? Maybe something that's an industry standard, something that maybe wasn't there, but that they tell you, not necessarily a surprise, but something that is just different than what you were expecting, right? That can go good or bad. Maybe you find out something through perspective. Maybe you hear something that's like, maybe this isn't the right work for me. Either way, if they're giving you new information, that can be helpful throughout the process to make this decision. This is the one, though, where you should be really concerned. And it is if they are trying to trick you with any information, right? There's a trap question. There are elements of this in athletics, right, where you are trying to get an objective sample size. But when we do that, usually we are testing them with something that they already know. Schematics, something related to the sport. In my case, a lot of times if I was talking to a prospective player, we would talk about a few things. I would maybe diagram something about our offense or our defense, get them back into a conversation, and then see how much they remembered from the conversation that we had just earlier about some of those schematics, right? I'm not trying to trip them up. I'm trying to test retention and information. That is fine. But if they give you a list of questions to potentially ask or to answer, and they throw a surprise one at you, not a follow-up one, but one that just comes completely out of nowhere, what are they really trying to get out of you, right? I understand on one hand testing somebody's ability to think on their feet, but there's a real difference between that and trying to trip somebody up intentionally to make them look bad, okay? There is a difference there. And the last one is going to be, are the questions uncomfortable, right? Not hard, but uncomfortable. Are they probing about information? There is a structure, there is a sequence to how interviews do typically go, and there are legalities that interviewers have to actually apply when asking questions. They cannot ask you certain questions unless the information is volunteered by you, then they are allowed to ask a follow-up question. But you decide what that means, right? Are they probing for information that really is unnecessary about the job? Are they asking about things that really don't have anything to do with your ability as a worker? That kind of probing information, real red flag, and something that you should take into account when you are trying to get information to make those decisions, all right? So clear out that part. You now get to ask some questions, and to get to this point means you are able to get some additional clarity. Always think in advance about what you want to know. For me, I ask some pretty hard questions, and a lot of interviewers don't like it, so I'm not advocating for you to put their feet to the fire. But what do you want to know? For me, I want to know what the plan is. I wanted to know what the plan is for somebody who was going to be in your infrastructure and working in your environment, especially for newer or specialized roles. You want to have an understanding that this is going to be supported, right? Not just you're going to be able to come in and work. You want to have actual tangible evidence that you're going to be able to do the job. Because again, looking for work is not a good time. What else do you value? Do you value growth? Do you value stability? Those are questions that you can ask, and questions that are really within the parameters of trying to find out, hey, is this going to be the right fit? Because ultimately that is what this is about. Questions about people who have not succeeded in roles like this, who has been unsuccessful in the company, what traits did they exhibit? If this is a role where somebody is being replaced, what happened to that last person? One of my favorites is there anything, are there pain points that you experience? Is there something that you don't like about the work that you do that maybe it would be good to be aware of? Any information that you are missing at that moment that would be helpful for you to make a decision, that is what you want to use your time for. If you don't have questions, it can come across poorly. If you ask too hard of questions, it can come across poorly. But really, again, at the end of the day, how well do you know the people that you are going to be entering business with, and what do you need to know to feel more comfortable with it? That's on both sides, but really for you, because a lot of this stuff is not tilted towards the worker. Okay. Things to look for that. How are they answering the questions? Are they surprised that you have them? I've been in a few situations where they are actually put off that I had a list of questions that I really wanted to ask. Again, I try to do my research. I try to look at companies, and I try to have substantive questions. Do they not have answers? Not always a bad thing, right? Maybe you are asking a question that highlighted a gap and they don't know, and maybe that's going to be part of your job to fix it. If they dismiss that question with not knowing, that can be problematic. Are they disingenuous? Maybe they don't say anything is bad about the work. Oh, you're going to love it here. It's great. I don't think I've ever had a bad day. Okay, that's unrealistic. Most of us are working hostages, and there is always something. There is always a pain point that exists because a lot of these systems are very bureaucratic. Do they look like hostages? That is important, right? A lot of companies do track the interviews of their talent acquisition folks, and they take down those metrics. So are they pressing a little bit? Do they look uncomfortable as interviewers? Do they feel like they're being monitored? That could be problematic because that could be signs of a bad culture that you could be walking into if they are operating from a point of fear. Okay? So all of that. Here is where you take a pause. Everything that you raise could bring up a red flag, and you could still end up getting an offer. Many reasons for that. But this is where your process comes into the equation. Go back to the very beginning with the intent of why you applied for that role. Do you have a checklist of the things that you really want and the things that you don't want? The 80-20 rule for applications, right? You should probably meet 80% of the threshold to be considered a viable applicant. 20% means that you are missing 20% of those things, but opportunities to kind of grow into that. You should have the same thing for the jobs that you apply for. That same 80-20 rule can apply to the things that you do and don't want. There is no perfect situation, but you can make a list of the things that you want, don't want, rank it, and have it so that if you do find yourself in that position, you can make an objective decision. The difficult part is if you get an offer and you need the job, you might take it. But think about what could happen if you took it and you ignored the warning signs. So here is where story number 2 is popping in, taking a sip of tea. This was a while back, and I found myself in an office role, and I was really looking for work, right? We've all been in those positions where you are desperately looking for work and you find the thing and it's great, interviews go well, and you are going to find yourself in. In the moment, I knew there were plenty of warning signs of why this was going to be problematic. The first one was the interview process was very rushed. There was very little respect for my time. I called them, asked them, just is the position still open? I would be interested in talking about it, and they asked me to come in for an interview literally within 2 hours. So not scheduling it the next day, just, hey, let's come in and talk today. I took it as a positive sign of urgency. They want to get this thing filled, and they like what they saw on paper. So I just went with it. But that was concerning just right off the jump. I go in, get a chance to meet people. I interview with the operations director and the CEO of the company just right off the top. We had about an hour conversation, and it sounded like we were trending in the right direction. Okay, sounds good. The next day, this is a Thursday, they offer me the role. Very quick. All right, that's awesome. I wouldn't say that that was a red flag, but it was very quick, right? So we just kind of went with it. But the bigger concern was, hey, can you come in and start the next day, which was Friday? No offer letter, just, hey, come in, we'll start getting this thing kind of put together and we'll get things up off the ground. I told them no. I said, could we wait till Monday? Just give me the day to kind of get things together, give me the weekend, and I'll be ready to roll on Monday. And that was how we did that. No offer letter, no paperwork, just we've got this thing, we will log you in as a temp worker. They had their own system, and we will get everything processed, but you're going to be working under these parameters as we speak. I didn't feel comfortable, but again, I needed the job. It was work that I would be interested in doing. My position was far enough removed from just the day-to-day operation that it would give me some autonomy. There were enough things to like, but again, looking back, there were a lot of things to not like. So we get ourselves into it. Day one on the job, I didn't really do anything that was related to my work. In fact, if anything, I was on the phones, essentially acting as a de facto customer service rep and operating their sales software. Not really what I wanted, but again, I'm trying to learn a broader piece of the operation because I'm working on stakeholder engagement. I was doing a lot of communications, some marketing, but really a lot of outreach. So I just went with it, fully immersed myself in. It was chaotic. I was not comfortable, and I survived the day. Great. We start to progress through things. We get through another couple of days. My offer letter still hasn't come here. I'm probing about it. I'm a little antsy, just like, hey, like, where is this? Don't worry, we're working on it. We'll get this to you. The offer letter never came. And because the offer letter never came, their full intention was to kind of keep me in this limbo role for about 2-3 weeks, ultimately give me what was going to be a half-baked offer letter, and essentially change the job that I was supposed to have. This is kind of shortcutting the story a little bit just for time reasons, but they lied about what they were ultimately going to have me be doing. Their plan was to kind of get me in, waste the time, and then ultimately just say, well, you've been doing this, there's a need for it, we can appropriately have you do this, and then just try to play it off like it wasn't going to be a big deal. I walked out on the job as soon as I realized what was going on, and the cascading results of it were 6 other people also walked out on the job because they saw exactly what happened to me, and it was passively happening to them too. They lost really high-level people inside of that organization, and it happened very quick. And the best part about it was the operations lady who hired me and lied to me and treated others like garbage got herself fired. So that, if anything, is the moral of the story, right? And looking back, and I've had time to reflect on that, I should have trusted myself. There were a lot of red flags, but the bigger thing is even if you take the role that you thought you were getting, you can bail. You are never stuck, okay? That is ultimately what all that means. So protect yourself as best as you can. Make sure that when you are looking for jobs, take it seriously. And if you get the interview, ask the right questions that are going to help you make an informed decision, all right? Like, subscribe, and engage. As always, I cannot save the world with anything that we talk about here, but if this does help you out a little bit, it's going to make the world a little bit better of a place, and that is all that matters. So, on that, happy Tuesday. We will see you next time.